Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 6th of March 2018, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your hosts today, Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson.
And no technical problems today for a change.
Okay, well, there we are. We're delighted to be joined today by Mark Anderson, truth hound at American Free Press, of course. And where are we going to start, Mike? That's the question.
Well, we're starting with Brexit, and according to the Express, David Cameron appears to have intervened just prior to Theresa May's speech the other day. Apparently, he held what was being described as a secret phone call with Theresa May before she made her speech at Mansion House. And this is according to Baroness Burton, who said that she did speak with him before the speech. They were in contact over the speech, a couple of days before. She said he has no plans at the moment to intervene. He feels very strongly that he should give his successor, Theresa May, space to set her policies forward. He thinks, by the way, that she's making absolutely the right decision in the way that she's going, and he's very supportive of her. He hasn't changed his mind, and that he thinks it would have been better to stay in the EU. He's deeply patriotic. And he absolutely does believe a deal is possible. So I'm not sure how we square all those positions of being patriotic but wanting to stay within the EU, being supportive of Theresa May when she's allegedly coming out of the EU when he wanted to be in the EU, unless, of course, it's all a fraud.
It's all a fraud, smoke and mirrors. Usually if you turn what a politician says on its head, turn it 180 degrees, you get the right answer.
But Mark, obviously a key part of David Cameron's Best of Both Worlds document and a key part of Theresa May's strategy for Brexit, in inverted commas, Brexit without the exit, is some sort of trade deal. And we thought we would have a look at what the various options for trade deals are and what the implications of trade deals are. And of course, one of the fallback positions, the secondary fallback position before we go to the final fallback position of WTO rules. But the secondary fallback position is that we would end up with some kind of free trade agreement similar to CETA, which is the Canadian agreement with the EU. And so you've written this article for the UK column here, dispute resolution under CETA, because one of the key points of Cameron's Best of Both Worlds document, and one of the key points, I believe, of Theresa May's policy, of course, it was at that time that TTIP was a key part of Britain's trade policy. I believe that hashtag Global Britain is all about sort of emulating TTIP in some way. So this is an important discussion to be had because it's interesting to see what similarities there are between CETA and TTIP and what potential similarities there are going to be between a future trade deal between Britain and the EU and what was planned for TTIP.
Oh, absolutely. This is just the first installment that I wrote for the UK column that's on the website now. Dispute resolution under CETA and TTIP, new investment court apparent portal, or a doorway to a global regime. And what I found, and this is just out of the starting gate, I'm going to be writing more trade articles for you guys under my news banner, Stop the Press's News, my independent news banner primarily. And what's interesting is that under TTIP in the latter 2015, and then when they signed the CETA agreement in 2016 between the EU and Canada, this investment court system, as it's called, the ICS, the investment court system, was birthed in latter 2015 and was inserted into CETA, and also is basically the dominant model for TTIP. And what they're saying, and I researched pro and con and neutral sources for this to make sure I get balance and completeness. What they're saying is this new investment court system, or ICS, is expected to be the world model, the multilateralization of trade, the only way they're going to do dispute resolution from now on. The old investor-state dispute system, the ISDS, that was prior to the investment court system, got a lot of complaints. Everybody said it was too pro-corporation, too much anti-state, anti-nation state. They rolled this out and said they listened to the stakeholders, they listened to the public. The investment court system will be none of that. But what I'm seeing is it'll be a lot of that and more, that it's going to be just as pro-corporate as before, only under a facade of being more pro-nation state. So they're putting this in there first, this investment court system, to globalize disputes between companies and nation states. You know, a company might want to sell tobacco products in a certain nation state. That nation state might say, we want certain warning labels of a certain kind on your tobacco products. And then that manufacturer of tobacco says, well, we don't want to go to the expense of doing that. So they go to court. And that's just one of many examples of why you have investor state dispute tribunals. But anyway, they are globalizing this. And this investment court system is becoming the model, the be-all, end-all model of all future trade deals.
Okay, well, if anybody wants to have a look at that, get onto the UK Column website and read the article. It's Dispute Resolution Under CETA. You'll find it on the front page. Now, Mark, we discussed the Italian election on the news programme yesterday, but I was interested in your take on it. The New York Times here focusing on the anti-EU views of the so-called far right and populists. But what's your take on the result in Italy?
Well, in an upcoming article for American Free Press and then later on my blogs, I'm going to be sorting this out in part because there's a Bilderberg element in this. That's what initially caught my attention. I don't know if you guys talked about that yesterday.
No, we didn't.
Okay, well, this Giorgia Meloni, this younger lady that's in the Brothers of Italy party, the Brothers of Italy being one of a so-called populist coalition that won in the elections on March 4. And the New York Times is complaining, well, we warded off the populists in the French elections, we warded off the populists and kept them at bay in the German elections, but now they're back with a vengeance. Oh no, what are we going to do? Our modernistic, globalistic view is being tattered again. So the New York Times, of course, is characterizing the populist movement, which consists of a number of elements, and they don't always agree on everything, but they're characterizing the populist movement, of course, as a dark day in Europe. Here in Italy, the third largest member of the Eurozone, this is a dark day. The forces of reactionary politics are coming back again with a vengeance. They lost in Germany, they lost in France, here they come again. But anyway, while the Times is sulking, what most of the media, except for pretty much American Free Press and maybe a couple others are talking about, is that behind the scenes, this Giorgia Meloni of the Brothers of Italy party, again, part of the populist coalition, had heard through the grapevine that one Emma Bonini could possibly be tapped to be prime minister, even though she's center-left, and the coalition that won, the populist coalition, is center-right. Well, Emma Bonini is a one-worlder to the core. She founded a huge abortion organization in Italy. She legalized abortion in Italy. She's single-handedly, virtually responsible for that. She's like a modern-day Margaret Sanger, the radical abortionist in the early 20th century America. So naturally, Miss Meloni was very, very upset that Miss Bonini, if I'm getting these names right, my gosh, Bonino?
It's Bonino, I think, yeah.
My gosh. Yeah, but Miss Meloni was very upset that Emma Bonino, this radical feminist Italian politician who's 70 years old and she's been in the establishment a long time, that someone center-left like her could possibly be considered to be prime minister, but be picked by the center-right. And Silvio Berlusconi is involved, of course. He's the Italian media magnate, now 81 years old, who is purportedly leading this populist coalition. I sense that could be a bit phony there, or certainly a little bit untrustworthy. But I guess he's the one that wanted Emma Bonino, a radical leftist, to lead this allegedly right-wing win in Italy, this new coalition. But in calling out Miss Bonino, Emma Bonino, Miss Meloni said that Emma Bonino talked about the Bilderberg Group in very soothing terms, and also Emma Bonino talked about George Soros in very favorable terms, even though Emma Bonino turns out works for the Open Society Foundation and is a member of the board of the Open Society Foundation. And that, of course, is George Soros' actual main group that he uses for subversion and coup d'etat and different anti-borders efforts that he does, and using foundation money to buy off activists and erode the nation state and erode the idea of national borders. So The big thing to watch isn't so much that the populace won in Italy. The big thing to watch is as they seat their government on March 23rd, who's going to be the prime minister? Will it be someone diametrically opposed to the populace or not? And if it is, that would suggest that the fix was in, at least in some quarters. So yes, it is a win, but yet we have this Bilderberg thing going on. At least Miss Meloni had the guts to call out Bilderberg because they're meeting in Italy this year, June 7 through 10, probably in Turin. Although there are rumors of Venice, believe it or not, but probably in Turin, June 7 through 10. But at least she called out Bilderberg and using Emma Bonino as her reason for doing that. And that, of course, shows some courage on Miss Meloni's part. But these are the dynamics going on. But who will lead and what goes on March 23rd is what's really going to tell the story.
And Ms. Bonino likens herself to Margaret Thatcher, according to News Update.
Yeah, which is pretty hilarious. It's as hilarious as it is inaccurate. Now, Maggie Thatcher, of course, was by far from perfect. She was really kind of a pro-free trade, sort of quasi-neocon in a lot of ways, sort of a counterfeit conservative, but nothing as radical, even close as Emma Bonino. So to compare herself to Margaret Thatcher is absolutely hilariously and deliriously inaccurate. I can't believe that the press would even take that seriously. I kind of threw that in as a comic relief item for this morning. Well, this morning from my end of the pond. So
yeah, okay. Well, look, getting back to the EU then for a second, and today is the Foreign Affairs Council meeting. So let's just briefly have a listen to what Federica Mogherini had to say as she was arriving at that.
We have today the first ever council in the formation of the permanent structured cooperation. So somehow it's an historic moment. The ministers will take first decisions, formal decisions on the projects on the permanent structured cooperation, and the member states participating to these projects. We'll also have an update and a discussion on our missions and operations, in particular the training missions we have in Africa. And we will have an exchange with the NATO Deputy Secretary General. Stoltenberg today is traveling to Jordan, but I talked to him on the phone in these days to advance on our good cooperation, all the projects we have and we're running together, and in view of the preparation for the NATO summit this summer. So it will be an intense day, and somehow, as I said, an historical day for the Council, because for the first time ever the ministers will take deliberations in the formation of the permanent structured cooperation. I'll meet you there.
So, permanent structured cooperation, PESCO, its first official meeting today, and so is a step forward.
And I'll just say, Mike, that apparently some senior retired military officers have described me as a zealot for daring to talk about some of this material.
Oh, okay.
So we must be getting pretty close to it.
Yeah. Well, good news, Brian.
Okay.
Good news.
We need that.
Yes, because the F-35 has, the F-35B, which is the variant that the UK will be getting, has actually landed for the first time on a floating vessel.
Right.
This is USS Wasp. Yes, that's correct. Which is described. This is the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, based in Okinawa in Japan. So they were in the East China Sea, and Rear Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of the Expeditionary Strike Force 7, said pairing F-35B Lightning IIs with the Wasp represents one of the most significant leaps in warfighting capability for the Navy Marine Corps team in our lifetime. This fifth generation stealth jet is extremely versatile and will greatly enhance and expand our operational capabilities. Well, here's the press release, and I have to say, if you have a look at this press release from the Amphibious Force 7th Fleet, it is gushing in its praise for the F-35. They're absolutely fantastic. Delighted with it. Here is the USS Wasp. Now, this is only 30 meters shorter than the HMS Queen Elizabeth, the new aircraft carrier for the UK. So this is about the same size, I guess, as that. We're calling it aircraft carrier. They call it an amphibious assault vessel.
Well, part of that, Mike, is the equipment you're going to put on it. If you've got it equipped to take aircraft, you're going to have an aircraft carrier. If you're going to use it primarily for amphibious operations, you're going to have helicopters. But these aircraft are supposedly going to be there for supporting fighter roles. But the Americans have got a proper navy. They've got enough ships to actually cover the different roles. We are selling off HMS Ocean. The plans are to get rid of our remaining amphibious capability. And people don't understand why this is happening. But of course, Theresa May has to do it so that Britain's military can be fully unified with the EU system.
Absolutely.
We just remind people that, of course, the British Harrier was doing this back in the 60s. So this is the huge progress in technology that's come out of what was a British project. But of course, British government has scrapped all of the British technology in order to give it to the Americans to sell it back to us at a greatly inflated price. I do know that the hatch that was open on the aircraft as it landed there, Mike, was to do with the engine, but I did wonder whether they had got the hatch open to let some fresh air into the cockpit for the pilots.
Yes, well, that's quite possible because the F-35 continues to suffer problems. And Vice Admiral Matt Winter, who's the Program Executive Officer at the F-35 Joint Program Office in the United States, is not satisfied, he says, with the pace of negotiations with Lockheed Martin for the 11th batch of Joint Strike Fighters. It's progressing too slowly because he expects to pay less for the latest batch. Apparently Lockheed Martin aren't so keen on that deal. But more worryingly, he has criticised them for being too slow or making too slow progress on eliminating what he describes as quality escapes. These are mistakes that are made by Lockheed Martin's workforce that, for example, include drilling holes that are too big or installing parts which are damaged. I'm not quite sure why you would do that, but there you go. That's been happening, and they're complaining about it somewhat.
Perhaps we should give Mark a right to reply, since we're being a little bit tough on American military equipment here, or perhaps we're not.
No, you're not being tough enough, gentlemen. Quality control. America's a military of quantity. The quality is kind of we're given the impression there's all this quality, but hidden behind the facade is a lot of problems with quality control through the whole Pentagon system, the whole verification system. I don't have a lot of knowledge about it, but we have this colossus military, but there are quality problems throughout, dependability problems, things that haven't been tested properly. It's kind of like pharmaceutical drugs. Get everything approved and get it out in the marketplace, and we'll worry about mistakes later. Yeah. And so this is just part and parcel of the lack of accountability throughout the whole procurement and contracting system in the United States. It's enough for a whole show in itself.
Okay, perhaps we should do that at some stage. Well, let's have a look at policing in UK, and this article caught my eye. It really is astonishing. Daily Mail: police force pays substantial damages to elderly couple and their son after armed officers arrested them at gunpoint and threatened to shoot their dog when they complained about their neighbours. And what's special about the couple? Well, the man is 86, his wife is 67, and they were there in the house with their son Ralph, who's 37. So an 86-year-old man and a 67-year-old woman. So let's have a look at what was actually said here. So it says that along with their son Ralph, that they were attacked by officers after they called the police for help. The family say they were stunned when 3 officers, including 2 carrying firearms, burst into their home in July 2014, demanding Brian hand over his legally owned shotguns. His wife claims she heard her elderly husband, who had recently dislocated his shoulder, cry out in pain while walking up the stairs with an officer. When she went to investigate, she claims an officer shoved her downstairs before pinning her to the ground and punching or kneeing her in the back. According to the family, Ralph came to help his mum but was handcuffed before being punched twice in the head by an officer. They also claim that the officer pulled out his pistol and threatened to shoot their pet dog. Now, let's have a look at what the lawyer said in the case, because the family won damages. So Gus Silverman here from Irwin Mitchell's solicitors said, "This is a truly shocking case of police officers acting well beyond their powers. and assaulting a family in their own home. The officers in this case seem to have thought they were dealing with a gang of dangerous criminals rather than two pensioners and their son who'd reported being harassed by their neighbours. Although the police have admitted legal liability, they have notably failed to apologise for assaulting and falsely imprisoning the couple, or for trespassing in their home and breaching the Human Rights Act. Instead, the police have only given my clients a bland apology for the quality of service they received. You happy with this so far, Mike?
Fantastic.
This is unbelievably dangerous stuff. So let's have a look at the police force. Here he is, Charles Hill, Chief Superintendent, West Mercia Police. And I thought it was significant, former staff officer, ACPO on policing. He says, I can confirm that West Mercia Police has agreed a legal settlement in relation to an incident arising from a neighbour's dispute in Shropshire in July 2014. We've settled the claim on the basis of technical legal advice, and we do not accept all elements of the claimant's case. So I've just added in there, we've got an 86-year-old man and a 67-year-old woman. He's basically saying, so what? So let's give a bit more. So the police here are essentially admitting, and it's in the article, that they treated the family in a way that was inhumane and degrading, violating their rights to privacy, and were therefore in breach of their human rights. But this is what the police say. 3 officers involved in the case were subject to a misconduct meeting where it was found there was no case to answer, although the force has taken some learning from the incident.
This is real common purpose language, isn't it?
This is common purpose language, and if anybody is looking at the photograph of this man and saying UK column has interfered with the man's eyes, I assure you we haven't. I find this very, very dangerous individual. We've got dangerous policing, dangerous policy, dangerous dismissive excuses and a cover-up, and that misuse of public money. Notice we're not told how much the police have paid out. This is immensely dangerous stuff. And what was ACPO, at the time ACPO produced the gun policy, it was a private company. Any investigation into this by the Daily Mail? No, they simply report it with the family saying, this is very scary, how can we feel safe if the police behave like this?
Well, you don't need to worry, Brian, because the Home Office is exporting British policing overseas as quickly as it possibly can. It holds an annual conference that starts today. The Security and Policing Conference 2018 begins. It says, established over 30 years ago and having a global influence, this Home Office event is the cornerstone of the security calendar and is the only closed event of its kind, so it's by invitation only. It's the premier platform for all relevant UK suppliers to showcase the very best, very latest equipment, training and support to police services, government departments, organisations and agencies from across the UK and overseas. A key focus is to demonstrate the opportunities presented by innovative cutting-edge technology. The Home Office is committed to working with partners in industry and academia to develop and collaborate on the products and services needed to cut crime, prevent terrorism, detect illegal immigration and promote growth. Being able to share needs whilst gaining a better understanding of the capabilities available is a critical part of this initiative. A unique 3-day environment is created annually at the Farnborough International Exhibition and Conference Centre, incorporating an extensive exhibition, live demonstrations, briefings and immersive experiences. So they have invited all kinds of countries: Algeria, Angola, Argentina, Australia, Bahrain, Belgium. It goes on. Finland, France, Germany. Notable in their absences are China and Russia, of course. But we've got the Netherlands, we've got NATO there, we've got the Netherlands, New Zealand,
this is global
Nigeria.
Policing.
This is absolutely global policing and equipping global policing with the skills that they need. Well, I was somewhat amused to see that in the live demo area, UK Capabilities Showcase sponsored by CrisisCast. CrisisCast is sponsoring that. That's fantastic. There we go. There they are. In 2018, we're collaborating with partner organisations to showcase their techniques, skills and approaches across a range of different scenarios. As part of those showcase, an exciting and diverse range of new products will also be demonstrated by participating exhibitors. Virtual scenes will be brought to life through a programme of carefully arranged activities. So who are CrisisCast? Well, here is the type of thing that CrisisCast does. They dramatise events for emerging security needs in the UK, Middle East and worldwide. Their specialist role, they say, their specialist role play actors, mainly with security clearance, are trained by behavioural psychologists and rigorously rehearsed in criminal and victim behaviour to help police, the army and the emergency services, hospitals, schools, local authorities, government, private security firms, shopping centres, airports, big business, criminal justice departments, media and the military to simulate incident environments for life-saving procedures. We use state-of-the-art British film industry techniques, props, special effects to help trainers deliver essential hands-on, high-octane crisis response and disaster management training. We also work with trainees, doctors, psychologists and care professionals. Okay, well, let's have a look at this, because this is from Robert Stewart's fabrication in BBC Panorama Saving Syria's Children. And he's showing here on the left an image from the BBC documentary Saving Syria's Children of a burned man, and on the right a simulated burned man, and they look almost identical. And the simulation on the right is a process called Hospex. Now, it wasn't CrisisCast in this case, but this is the type of thing that we're talking about here. So have we seen evidence of the past of this, of CrisisCast type organisations being used by the media to present a narrative? I suspect we have, but this is the main sponsor of this event. And, you know, CrisisCast not the only one. Here's another one. This is SimBodies. SimBodies. So they create simulated bodies for use in this type of thing, including bodies of children. And the next slide is pretty unpleasant because it's quite realistic looking. But this is another organisation that does the same type of thing. So perhaps when we see this coming out of the white helmets yesterday and then being reinforced by the Daily Mail today, perhaps we need to actually take a look at what we're seeing and question. The Daily Mail, of course, hasn't questioned what the white helmets are pushing out, but perhaps we should be.
Totally agree with that, and that gives us a nice lead into the BBC. So this was a fascinating article I stumbled across in the Sunday Times, just the Sunday just gone. Here's the headline: BBC warns of tech giants dividing the UK. And as I read this article, I picked up panic in the BBC. This was the Director General in London, more or less trying to rally his troops. The sub-headline is: the Director General of the corporation fears Google, Amazon and Facebook pose a threat to our social cohesion and identity. Well, let's have a look at what Tony Hall, the director, had to say. He said technology and social media can add to this social unease and sense of division. It can distort our view of one another and allow us to live in imagined communities where we only really engage with those who share our views. Is he worried about that, or is he promoting it?
I'm not clear, but hold on a second. This is the man from the BBC who would very much prefer that we only engage with the BBC and share their views.
Absolutely right, Mike. So let's move on. Fake news compounds that challenge, eating away at trust in the media, including the BBC, and blurring the lines between reality and so-called alternative facts. The country needs a BBC that helps society understand itself better, that explores our nation's differences passionately and robustly, that projects British creativity and values globally, that reminds us every day of the things that we hold in common.
Oh, it's hard to keep a straight face.
We as a nation couldn't exist without the BBC, because we'd all wander around during the day not understanding ourselves.
Yes.
We need the BBC. This man is on planet Zanussi, very, very dangerous. I just put this label in. 83%, according to that Daily Mail, or the survey that the Daily Mail published, 83% of Britons do not trust the BBC. We thought we'd tell the Dark Lord Director General that. And I think the public is waking up to the fact we've got a £3.74 billion propaganda machine here. But the language from this man is astonishing. The BBC represents a set of democratic ideals that matter greatly to our country, giving a voice to the voiceless, pursuing the truth without fear or favour. I mean, this is, I just had to add this. Trust me, I really do believe my own propaganda. And no, we're not going to broadcast any views that the BBC does not agree with. And the truth that people see through our lies and propaganda is inconvenient and is also not for publication. You do not have a BBC in America. You are very lucky people. You can comment in any way you wish, Mark.
Well, it's funny how the BBC, as you guys have reported many times over the years, they foment unrest and they foment division through their overseas operations that are external to the UK, correct? And so the BBC is this one world or global Britain kind of organization, and they call for this forced diversity, the forced integration of people that Sadiq Khan is so good at talking about, your London mayor. And then they wonder why there's division, even though the BBC is actually an instrument in trying to break down Britain's traditions, trying to break down and dissolve Britain's customs, Britain's long-held beliefs. So on the one hand, they break down traditional British society, and on the other hand, they moan and complain and gripe that people aren't getting along, that people view each other with suspicion. So they're spoiling the very cake that they want everyone to eat here. So this is very dialectical language. I'd hate to think he's not aware of what he's doing. If he's not, he's a total dunce. But I think he is aware of it. I think this is a very clever dialectical process to create the very problems that you say are menacing society. And then he's indirectly lashing out even at the UK column in a sense, because you're part of the alternative media that he says is creating division, when in fact you're the ones, along with others, that are trying to bring some sanity and a little bit of Britain's traditions back into focus.
Mark.
So,
sorry, Mark.
Yeah,
go ahead.
They wouldn't even say this unless they were scared of losing the narrative. So they are scared of losing the narrative, in my opinion.
And that's exactly what I think. I read that article, I reread it, and I thought these people are getting really scared. Let's just remind ourselves, what is the experience of this man to be the Dark Lord Director General of the BBC? Well, he joined the BBC in 1973. He's a BBC man all of his life, which is apparently why he's got a brain full of the BBC. But he's also done a bit of work with the Royal Opera House. And then he was also involved with a ballet company, or a charity, I think it was, where he was earning between £165,000 and £205,000 a year due to his charity involvement, the highest paid charity person in the UK at the time. This man is very, very dangerous. I don't think he's been selected to be Director General of the BBC because he's incompetent. I think he knows what he's doing. And you're quite correct, Mark, to highlight the dangerous work of the BBC to help subvert countries overseas.
That's not to say, of course, that Facebook and Twitter and so on shouldn't be criticised. Yeah. And here is an example of why they should. This is Jonathan Haynes from The Guardian. He was highlighting the fact that on Sunday, Facebook had been running a survey for some users, asking how they thought that Facebook should handle grooming behaviour. One question began: there are a wide range of topics and behaviours that appear on Facebook. In thinking about an ideal world where you could set Facebook's policies, how would you handle the following? A private message in which an adult man asks a 14-year-old girl for sexual pictures. And it gave some examples there, or it gave the choices. This content should be allowed on Facebook, and I would not mind seeing it. This content should be allowed on Facebook, but I don't want to see it. This content should not be allowed on Facebook, and no one should be able to see it. I have no preference on this topic. So those were the options. And Jonathan Haynes saying, well, and asked this, and I'm making it secret, the best that Facebook can offer here? Not, calling the police. So Facebook under a bit of criticism for that. This was a response. We run surveys to understand how the community thinks about how we set policies, but this kind of activity is and will always be completely unacceptable on Facebook. We regularly work with authorities if identified. It shouldn't have been part of the survey. It was a mistake.
No, it was a mistake that it was picked up. That was the mistake. They didn't think the public would pick up on it because these people have got too big a workforce to make that sort of mistake, in my opinion, Mike.
Right, absolutely. And in the meantime, TechCrunch here pointing out that Facebook has been found guilty in court again. So tracking of non-users ruled illegal again. Now, how does this happen? Well, unfortunately, TechCrunch is partly assisting the problem because, as you can see under the headline there are a whole load of social media buttons. And most of those buttons these days, not on the UK column website, I'll point out, but most of those buttons these days have JavaScript attached to them, and Facebook in particular tracks people through those buttons across the internet. The European Union has decided that this is, judges in Belgium have decided that this is illegal. It's breaching EU privacy laws by deploying technology such as cookies and social plugins to track internet users across the web. Facebook uses this data to sell targeted advertising, of course. The report here says the social media giant failed to make it sufficiently clear how people's digital identity or digital activity was being used. Facebook faces fines of up to 100 million euros at a rate of 250,000 euros a day if it fails to comply with the court's ruling to stop tracking Belgians' web browsing habits. We're not getting the same kind of protection in the UK at the moment. Facebook was disappointed with this. They said the cookies and pixels that we use are industry standard technologies and enable hundreds of thousands of businesses to grow their businesses each and reach customers across the EU. We require any business that uses our technology to provide clear notice to end users, and we'll give people the right to opt out of having data collected on sites and apps of Facebook being used for our ads. Well, I haven't noticed being presented with an opt-out for that, have you?
No.
No.
Well, of course, we can't do anything about child abuse online, mainly because we don't want to do anything about child abuse. Yesterday, John Wedger completed his walk from London to Manchester. Picture of him with Maggie Oliver and ex-GMB man Pete Jackson, two very keen supporters of John Wedger. We've got a little video clip where we can hear John talking about the walk and why he's doing it in his own words.
Right, we made it to Albert Square, which is ironic. Manchester Town Hall, I think this is day 10, and day 10 of walking. And with me I've got Pete Jackson, ex-GMP.
Come in, Pete.
And we got Maggie, our Mags.
The Magster.
So,
well done, John.
we made it. Hopefully we've got the national press coming, and what we're doing, like I said, we're highlighting the plight of police whistleblowers.
John Wedger, London to Manchester Canal Walk. We're calling for an independent police whistleblowers ombudsman so that senior police officers can be
held accountable.
To account.
Yeah.
And people trying to be heard, like the three of us, have somewhere to go. And they don't lose the jobs to speak out, and they don't fear going to prison, or indeed go to prison, like some people do.
And the thing is, it's all about the victims of abuse, because if we're silenced, they don't stand a chance of getting any justice. And if the police can't have their word, then how will they get anything out? It's wrong on all levels, and each one of us has suffered monumentally on a personal, financial, and every other emotional level for doing what the public expects of us. And we all took an oath to act without fear or without favour. And what we're asking is for other officers to do it, and for the public to be behind us, and for the MPs to push this forward and make our society better by giving us the right protection, because at the present we have no protection.
Well, there we are. That was a video clip of reality. This is the real news. We're going to thank Dylan and Louise Collins for providing that clip for us. There's more if you go onto the Facebook page. You can see that address in just a moment. That was the reality. A man walks over 200 miles through some pretty intense cold for UK in order to highlight child abuse and the cover-up of child abuse by the Metropolitan Police, members of the establishment, some politicians. What does the BBC do, Mike? Well, pretty easy. A stunning silence. So BBC Three Counties Radio did one interview. That has all got pretty mucky because Mike Penning MP said that he'd handed the file about John Wedger and the child abuse into the Home Office, but it had been lost. What does BBC News do? Nothing. A stunning silence. And we've just heard Tony Hall saying that the BBC is giving voiceless people a voice, is telling the truth. Utter propaganda and lies. This is the reality. Nothing from the BBC. What are the BBC putting out? Well, this was three of their top headlines that I was able to pick off the internet. A story which is sad. Bill Turnbull, ex-BBC host, has got prostate cancer. That is very sad, I agree. However, he's one of very many men in the country. The BBC is not talking about them. We've got Russian spies' illness, and we've got Britain needs a diet. So this is the utter rubbish that the BBC is putting out, and we've just heard Tony Hall talking. But let's go into this one, because if we go to BBC Radio Manchester, the local radio programme, they knew this war was happening. Nobody was there, no reporting. And when I spoke to Radio Manchester this morning, they said, well, we didn't report because there was no local interest for us. There was nothing that concerns us.
Oh.
Okay?
Because children aren't being abused in Manchester, is that it?
No, apparently not. And Maggie Oliver's from the local area, but that doesn't make a difference either. No local interest. So I decided to have a look on the Radio Manchester Twitter page. We've got one tweet here. Women, do you feel equal? That's clearly an important one. But underneath it was this one, which caught my eye. Coronation Street actor Jack P. Shepherd says he hopes playing a victim of male rape will help survivors to come forward. So the BBC Radio Manchester can't report the reality of police officers talking about what's really happening. They're going to use Coronation Street actors to play victims. I found this pretty unpleasant. Now, one of the things we've been talking about is we've been asking people to get onto these Twitter accounts and post your comments. So I did. I put here, BBC Radio Manchester promotes Coronation Street actor asking survivors to come forward, but doesn't publish a word of former Met Det John Wedger's walk London to Manchester to raise awareness. And I've put the link in there. I really think we need to do this. It's not enough just to let them go away. But this is what the BBC says. We're not going to report the reality of child abuse. Let's play victims. This is a very nice image grabbed from that video here. Obviously, John Wedger with Maggie Oliver, another very brave police whistleblower. And I'm going to say to our audience today, what will you do to support these very brave policemen and women who have now come forward to speak publicly about the cover-up of the abuse of children by the British state? They are talking about cover-ups within the Metropolitan Police, other police forces, politicians, Westminster as a whole, local authorities and the charities. What can you do? Challenge those MPs. Just one MP at the moment, Mike Penning, been prepared to stand up. Andy Burnham, Mayor for Manchester, said, I was going to support it, but I didn't know what the date was. So pretty pathetic excuse there. It's not enough for us to watch this material. It's now the onus is on us, the public, to support these people. Reasonable letters challenging MPs and the police, tweets, get on their Twitter page, take some action. Mark, I don't know how the state sees Britain at the moment, but here, if you're living in UK at the moment, it is obvious that we are in one of the most corrupt, if not the most corrupt nation in the world at the moment, where, of course, British politicians standing on the stage lecturing other countries or whipping up wars where it will mainly be American servicemen and women who will die. It is disgusting stuff.
Oh, indeed it is. We see the abuse of children in regular society, and as those children get older, they're abused in unwinnable, undeclared, pointless wars that are started and inaugurated for global consolidation, world consolidation. You know, I can't help but comment very briefly on the media part of this. I've run into this through my contacts in Canada and through my own experiences, this idea that something has to be so localized. If it doesn't happen within like 2 blocks of where you're sitting, suddenly it's not news. This kind of myopic vision of the media. And they want to call the people that are more nationalistic in their views, they want to call them insular, or they want to call them isolationists. Look at how isolationist the mainstream press is being in this case. If something doesn't happen right outside their back door, it's not news, even though child abuse is a nationwide problem and even a worldwide problem. So again, they're just making paltry excuses that bear no relation to reality, and it's just sad that the media can't get its priorities straight on child abuse and related matters. It's a total abandonment of journalistic principles and an abandonment of pursuing the truth.
Yeah, sad reflection. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us. That brings us to the end of today's news. I'd just like to say May the 12th, important day, the Albert Hall in Nottingham, an NHS conference over quite a long time. The UK column has been really bombarded with people saying we need to do something to show what's happening in the NHS, and we've decided the time's come. So get that date into your diaries. We're going to start advertising it. We'll tell more about speakers, but the NHS is now within a whisker of being privatised. That was always the intention. But of course, what's come with that privatisation, as well as neglect and mistakes, is horrific bullying of the doctors and nurses and other managers who are trying to do their best to provide healthcare for the UK. So there we are, May the 12th, all-day conference in the Albert Hall, Nottingham. More to come shortly.
Right, Mark, just 1 second.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce that Patrick Henningsen, who of course is a co-host with you, Mike, sometimes in UK Column, he's coming into Texas this coming weekend, and we expect to work together covering global cities programs that cover feminist cities, that cover defending sanctuary cities, that give sanctuary to illegal migration in the United States. A number of foreign policy and global city programs going on at the annual South by Southwest conference in Austin. Patrick will be here in the States. I should be working with him this weekend, and we may very well be able to put together some news for next week on that. So we're tracing the global cities movement all the way to Austin. So I just wanted to announce that.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. That's the end of today's news. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.